Most retirees who've accumulated sizable nest eggs secretly struggle, but it's not why you might think like overspending. The whole point of saving and investing for retirement is that upon reaching retirement, it's time to spend down your money and enjoy it. And in this video, I'm going to show you how to do just that. Because in reality, there's a growing base of research which finds that for most of retirement, retirees are simply continuing to grow their money beyond what they started with. And this is creating a gap between what retirees could spend versus what they are actually spending. It's the difference between what your ideal retirement could look like versus a retirement that's just happening to you. In a study entitled Spending in Retirement, Determining the Consumption Gap, researchers showed that affluent retirees who rely on their portfolio for income are failing to even spend their annual income. In fact, the data shows their spending actually begins to decline in retirement. And the kicker is, the more affluent they are, the worse they are at spending. Now, I have several suspicions as to why this is the case. The first is overuse and dogmatic adherence to the 4% rule of thumb. This chart shows you the different scenarios of what can happen to your money if you follow a static 4% withdrawal rate over a 30-year period. And this assumes you start retirement with a $1 million portfolio allocated to a 60-40 and take $40,000 per year adjusted for inflation over time. And so each line you're seeing there represents one of 1,000 different outcomes. And you'll see here, there is a 10% chance you run out of money in year 23. But on the flip side, there's also a 53% chance you end up with more than your starting balance of $1 million. But I think there is another reason besides withdrawal strategies that cause retirees to underspend, and that's the mindset. Classically, retirement should be a time to decumulate, but what I find is many people have a hard time decumulating. Instead, they go into preservation mode. And the easiest way I've learned to tease out which stage people are in is to listen very carefully. Most often, people who are stuck in a preservation mode will talk about preserving their principal, or wanting to spend only the gains or the dividends. So if you're in retirement or close to it, ask yourself, would you consider yourself a decumulator, or are you focusing on just preserving your wealth? And if you're in that preservation mindset, ask yourself why. Maybe there is a good reason, but if you don't know, really why you are, it's time to dig a little bit deeper. Because even with all this research available and knowing that you could probably spend more, I believe on its own, it's unlikely to change anything. And before I show you a better solution to minimize the chances of running out of money, yet maximizing your spending, there is an exercise you must go through first. Because this exercise will tell each one of you what you should do with your spending. First, ask yourself if you're someone who leans towards being tight or loose with money. Then ask yourself if you're someone who places a high value on material things or a low value. And here's how this works in practice. So I'm someone who's naturally more tight with money, and I place a high value on material things. And if I look at that box, I would be classified as a value seeker. And it's pretty spot on because I do spend extensive time researching and saving in order to buy nice things. So now I want you to do this for yourself and see where you fall. There is no right or wrong answer, and there is no right or wrong box since we are all uniquely made. Now, here's why this exercise is so important. If you feel best about money when you fall into the tight with money and low material box, then not spending money is what makes you happy. And there is no reason to convince yourself to spend more because it would simply be painful. But if you fall in any other camp when you're feeling best with money, or perhaps there are specific camps you strive to be in. For example, maybe you like to be looser with money and be less material, which would mean, more experiences, services, or things that benefit other people, then this next tool is for you. Now, this is the best tool I've personally found to date to help folks avoid running out of money while simultaneously providing a higher retirement income. Because most people don't know about it, and it could potentially transform your retirement. See, the classic technique to know how much you can spend is to use withdrawal rates. In other words, based on asset allocation and historical return data, you, in theory, should be able to calculate a safe annual portfolio withdrawal rate. But this approach does not account for the investment returns you actually experience in retirement. For example, the safe withdrawal rate could increase through your retirement if you experience strong investment returns in the first few years of retirement, or if other income sources like Social Security are expected to start down the road. So this new method called a holistic risk-based guardrails approach has entered the scene, and it takes into consideration changing market returns, inflation, future income sources or changes, your life expectancy, and a lot more. And the reason it can help you avoid underspending is because it's evaluated every single month to ensure you're on track. When the risk of your plan has decreased, potentially because market returns are better than expected, it provides you a measure of how much you can safely increase your income by. Now, most of our clients are quite content in retirement, and so we tell them their accounts have performed well and the risk within their plan has decreased, so they could take more income if they wanted to. Now, many of them don't because they don't need it. So we show them what's possible. What would it look like to help that friend who's struggling financially? Or what would it look like to help that neighbor anonymously who's been having a rough time? You know, maybe you'd want to help family members or give to charities and organizations that you're passionate about. It's this increase of spending when prudent, right? That's the key that helps prevent the risk of ending retirement with more money than you started. But on the flip side, when the risk of your plan has increased, it provides you with a measure of how much you should decrease your income by to reduce the chances of running out of money. The key here is that running out of money is not an option. And then you know, based upon your unique retirement income plan, how much income needs to be adjusted. But the reason this system can allow you to spend more without increasing your risk of running out of money is because it incorporates with the realities of life. There are often considered 3 stages of retirement called the go-go, slow-go, and no-go years. Now, when you first retire, you probably have quite a bit of energy. You have health, you can travel, you can finally do the things you've been putting off. These are the go-go years. So very often spending is and should be higher in the early stages of retirement because you can actually enjoy it. But towards the middle of retirement, most folks start to slow down. You know, things just don't work the same anymore, and you usually start losing some energy. So typically spending starts to slow down in these slow-go years. And the last stage of retirement are the no-go years. You probably have your least amount of energy in this stage, but your spending is likely picking up. And that's because you often have other expenses arising, such as increased medical costs. This is what it often looks like in reality. And most people's inflation-adjusted spending is highest at the beginning, decreases over time, and then picks up towards the end. And by properly accounting for these realities, it can allow you to have more income in the years you want it without sacrificing the income you will likely need towards the end of life. Now, you might be wondering how you can plan for unexpected expenses in retirement that could potentially wipe you out like a long-term care health event. Because you may argue the purpose of underspending is to ensure you have enough of a buffer to cover catastrophic expenses. So if you're curious how I implement this system for clients and account for dynamic spending and potential catastrophic events, then you'll want to watch this video right here, where I go through a real case study of a client of mine.